Hi, I'm Paul.
And I'm Tiffany.
To some, we could be called career wizards.
And to others, sometimes we seem like therapists. However, we definitely are not.
But for you, we are the co-hosts of the Career Boosters podcast.
I know, for example, one of our peers had competition or competitive, or I can't remember the exact term for it, but that's how they had a big part of their influencing, while mine was communication and move. So, but at the end of the day, it was a matter of working with people and trying to get to more common goals.
Okay, hello and welcome to the Career Boosters podcast, season 3, episode number 9. We break strengths classes for MBA students into 2 weeks, and we do that for a reason. One, we want to understand first what our talents are and how do we invest into our talents and make those strengths. And in week 2, we start to look at growing kind of the knowledge around the 4 domains around Gallup-Clifton strengths, which are relationship building, executing, influencing, and strategic thinking. And then thinking about how our strengths or how our talents could partner with the strengths of others. Overall, just more conversations about focusing on what MBA students and what we are really good at, which is cool. Today, we have one of our first year MBA students, Frans Hanna, joining us. Frans is a pure joy to have in our class. He participates with a great amount of thoughtfulness and eagerness to share perspectives, thoughts, opinions, and Tiffany and I really appreciate it. And as facilitators of the class, we love that there's nothing better than a student participating with us and engaging in our conversation, which is really fun. And it makes the class go by much easier for everybody. So Frans, thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. And if you can start by answering our very first question, which is, what is the story behind your decision to embark on an MBA journey right now?
So, as far as the entire story is actually quite long, but to make it a little bit shorter, I currently work as a registered nurse. I graduated about 5 years ago, and I've been working doing that. And throughout my career, I've been wanting to be more involved in the decision side, making things, like be more involved. And yeah, so I try to figure out what the best way to facilitate that was, and turns out MBA was going to do that the best for me. So yeah.
Nice. Can you tell us a little bit about like your background and what the history is? So as an RN, what do you do? How did you get to be an RN? And then, this decision making, wanting to be part of the bigger decision. What's that been like for you to kind of come into the MBA?
So how did I get into the RN program to begin with? Initially, I thought I was going to go into med school. My dad works as a physician. I've always looked up to him, so I wanted to be like him, help people. And part of specifically healthcare is I've always wanted to help people regardless of who they are. So when I figured out after 1 year of sciences that med school wasn't going to be my thing because of too much studying, my dad initially suggested the RN program and then become an NP. And I'll be honest, I had no idea what an RN was at that time. I only knew what a physician did, or I thought I did, and I knew what a healthcare aide was, but I didn't know there was such a thing in between, in terms of like, if we look at it in a hierarchy, but really everyone does what they do quite well. But I go into the RN program, and then I realized I didn't want to be a physician. I wanted to be a nurse. They're the ones who spent all their time with patients. Physicians, and rightfully so, only have time to see a patient for like 5 minutes, and then they have to go on to the next. But as I did my RN program, I realized nursing is what I want to do. And then around my 3rd year, I learned about health informatics with Connect Care, and then that triggered some interest there. But then the leadership side of things came in my 4th year, where I did a rotation with the program manager of the mental health side of things at the Misericordia Hospital. And working with him, I'm still in touch with him. He retired, but I'm still in touch with him. I took him up as a mentor, and I learned quite a bit of leadership from him. And then during my preceptor, I actually worked in one of his units for my 4th year. So I got to see both sides of things, where I got to see the staff, the employees, and the higher up level of things. So after doing that, I loved it. But then after I graduated, finding a job was a little bit tricky because they weren't hiring on that unit that I preceptored in, but I ended up working in a long-term care facility where I ended up taking up a leadership role. And yeah, so that's what ultimately brings me to the leadership side of things.
Cool. What's been the favorite part of the MBA program so far?
I'll be honest, the laughs I've been having, everyone seems to have a good sense of humor, and I enjoy laughing. When we work, we're quite good at working, but when it comes to having fun, there's been some really good laughs that I've been enjoying, so yeah.
And I appreciate that what you found to love the most on the medicine side was the people, the patients, spending time with the patients, and what you're enjoying the most of the MBA is laughing with other people. Like, what a lovely common thread of people, which good thing, because life is full of people. As we kind of dive into some strengths, we're going to talk more today about kind of how our strengths work with other people's strengths, but we need to know what yours are. You want to tell us your top 5 strengths and what they mean to you?
So my top 5 strengths, I'm looking away because I have 2 screens, but belief was my first one, woo, then communication, futuristic, and includer. Now, as far as what they mean to me, belief, honestly, based off the description, kind of describes me quite well. I mean, ultimately, all of them describe me because I'm the one who answered those questions. But belief is really what drives what I do day in, day out. It drove me into my career, drove me into the MBA. It gets me going, I guess. So there's that. As far as woo was the second one. That one initially, when I read the description, I was like, woo, I don't try and impress people. But after reading it a little bit more, the description that they gave it was, I try and, in a way, not necessarily impress people for the sake of impressing them, but try and work with people to work with people. So I gain people's trusts in that sense. So that one, I do like working with people. It's a big part of healthcare as well, so working with people is what I have to do. And I really enjoy it, so that works quite well. Communication, that was one of the skills in my nursing career that I try to work on quite early on, because I learned that the better you can communicate with people, the better you can get to whatever needs you or they need. The next one was futuristic. As far as futuristic, this one sometimes gets misconstrued at I plan things and I have to follow them, but for me it's more so I look towards what my goals will be in the future. There's something that I need to eventually reach, and it kind of goes hand in hand with some of the other ones as well, like belief. So, and includer is the last one that I had. And as far as includer, I don't like seeing people not being involved. Some people hate that I do that, but I like getting everyone involved, so yeah.
I think that, you talked about the favorite thing of the MBA, and it's this laughter together is what you said. And think about includer, that is all about that, right? As we can all have a laugh together. What were your first impressions when you read your report, and how well do you think that your report describes you?
Honestly, initially I was a little bit I just took it with the surface level. The woo one was the one that kind of caught me off guard based off of the general description, but after reading through them, I honestly, it makes sense. I'm the one who answered those questions, so it should reflect what I think. And looking through them, I do agree with them. And it makes sense for quite a few of them, like belief. It's that one, like, I didn't even have to do this. I didn't know what the word would have been, but I knew that was like what is my main thing. So, yeah.
And so you share that with Paul. Paul has belief in his top five, which makes both of you people that I don't want to argue with. Like and argue is probably not the right debate, right? Your strong moral compasses are pointed in the direction they are pointed in, and so when we look at that, there's positives and negatives to every single strength. But I know, working with Paul, that if I have a thought that might maybe compete with something he believes, I better have a good reason to try to challenge that. Like that's just something that I understand, and I would imagine that you're kind of the same.
If I can if I can just share something about
Yeah,
belief that really resonates with me, and I'm not sure, Franz, if this resonates with you, but when I think about belief, I think about it like the willingness to be authentically yourself. Like I really like, I have my beliefs, I have my core values. I'm very much willing to listen to other people because I think I have all of these relationship building things that are a part of who I am. But I really firmly believe in what I believe in, right? And I think that our core values help us just be authentically true to who we are. And so when Tiffany comes with an idea, I will bring like, this is what my thoughts are and this is why I believe it, right? And I have a firm grasp of that. And so, I can very much relate to belief. And I don't know many people that actually have belief in their top five. It's not something that I see a ton with MBA students. So
Cool. Sorry, you look like you're going to say something, Franz. No?
Yeah, no, I was just going to say I agree with that. It definitely drives, like, not only what I think, but it also helps me at times make sure that I understand where people are also coming from. Because if someone's going to say something, I want to know more about it. So, yeah.
Cool. Well, we learned more about ourselves and others in class. And the very first activity we did, we had everybody separate into one of the corners of the room. So, excuse me, Paul at the top talked about Clifton Strengths has 4 different categories, and there's 4 rooms in the classroom, conveniently. So we all split into the corner where you had the most amount of strengths. So in relationship building, strategic thinking, executing, and influencing. Tell us which corner you picked, kind of what the discussion was, and what you discovered with others you were chatting about in your corner.
So I actually ended up in influencing. I had a color, like, from each one. I had one in each one of the 4 corners, but influencing I had 2 in. So I went in that area. There wasn't many of us. There was only 4 of us. But it was still interesting to see that despite having the same overarching, like, influencing, how we go about doing it was different amongst each one of us. Because I know, for example, one of our peers had competition or competitive, or I can't remember the exact term for it, but that's how they had a big part of their influencing, while mine was communication and move. So, but at the end of the day, it was a matter of working with people and trying to get to more common goals. That was the end result. And even the weaknesses on the influencing side of things, what we noticed was when things didn't really, or like the thing that was a weakness is whenever we try and do it too much, it ends up harming us as a result. I know it's also the case with some of the other ones, but for at least the influencing, it felt like it was more a personal hurt that we would receive from doing it too much. So, yeah.
it's interesting. There's a lot of like pride that happens in the influencing domain, and I look at you know, when I look at winning others over, it's and that's woo, but it's the ability to just like navigate a different group of relationships, and the ability to, you used a really interesting term in class. You talked about it helps you build trust with other people, and I offered a counterpoint to that is sometimes woo just like lives on like the 20% of the iceberg that we can see above the surface of the water. It's like lacks depth, but you talk about building trust through that, like just meeting more and more people. And the other side, the area of growth potentially could be is you only have a certain amount of time to develop as many relationships as you can, which is really nice. And I think when we think about our talents and our strengths, there are light sides and dark sides to everything, right? And I think that's one thing that I think is really unique about strengths is that we can look at what really is great about it, but we can also look at what could be detrimental or what could just be holding us back a little bit. And sometimes I think that influencing a little group gets a bad rap because they're the ones that are kind of scary. Like they are typically like there's one in there that's called command that is like that's the captain of the ship. That's the person that people are terrified of typically, right? And so, but I think there's so much wonderful ability to be influential, and I think that's so powerful. We also did this activity that was called a window into my strengths. It is a bit of a reflection. So it looks at you get the best of me when, you get the worst of me when, you can count on me for, and what I need from you is. And then we ask you guys to fill out the statements after that. How was that exercise for you? And if you're comfortable, would you be willing to share one of the statements that you came up with or one of the responses you came up with?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Now, as far as how I found it, I'll be honest, from my perspective, to me, I felt like I was writing the same thing, like in 4 different ways, in 4 different corners. But ultimately, to me, at least answering those questions felt easy because I've worked through a lot of different groups to understand what I need from people, what people like, how they can get the best of me and things of the sorts. The one that or one of them, I wouldn't mind sharing all of them, but one of them that I'll share that I really liked how I answered it is, what I need from you is, I wrote honesty and transparency. I don't need perfection, but I need to know what you are thinking and going through. Because oftentimes whenever I work with groups, sometimes some people don't give what I think is their 100%, which is fine. There's multiple things that play into what is causing them to do that. But for me, I need to know at least a part of it. They don't need to go into detail, but just that transparency piece makes it a lot easier for me. So, yeah.
It's really beautiful. We often talk about we miss the curiosity with other people. We see, Paul just talked about the tip of the iceberg, right? We see the tip of the iceberg and we miss asking about what's underneath the iceberg. And so we're back to how do you build trust? And I would suggest that's a really key part of building trust is for you to be able to connect with people underneath the iceberg and understand what's going on and care about what's going on underneath the iceberg, which I think is a beautiful way to demonstrate those strengths. We also talked about how sometimes our strengths can collide with each other or there's tensions. We come at things from opposite directions. Paul and I experience this. Paul and I are similar in some ways, but we are certainly not in some other ways as well. And our strengths can sometimes do this. So we went through, an example is some strengths lend to speed. So that's me. I like to move really fast. Some strengths lend themselves to being more deliberative, to thinking things through before action, which might be the side that Paul would put himself on. And so what side did you pick for that one? Let's take that tension and tell me a bit about that conversation when you chatted with somebody else from the other side.
So as far as the sides, I still remember I was sitting in class and you guys were saying, pick a side. And I was just sitting there. I'm like, well, sometimes I'm one and sometimes I'm the other. And Paul just goes, if you're still thinking about it, you're in the thinking side. I was like, okay, that makes sense. So I went over to that side. But when we met up with the other person, because at the end of the day, I think for me, I can do both and I don't mind doing both. As long as the other person that I'm working with, I can understand where they're at. I can meet, it might not be the best result that I can give them. And as long as they can understand that and that I'm trying to meet them where they're at, then it works out usually fine. So when it came to talking with the other individual, they said what they said, and I was like, that's completely fair. That's understandable. So yeah, as far as meeting the other person, it wasn't too tough for me. So yeah.
I like the way you phrased that, meeting them where they're at and meeting yourself where you're at too, because we also change. I'm curious about the other two. You don't have to tell about the conversations, but when we talked about big picture or details, which side of the room did you go to for that one?
For the big picture and details, I went with big picture. I'm always, and I've learned that through healthcare, is people are quick to point fingers, but then I realized that person made a mistake most often than not because of their poor intentions. It's the result of many other things. So I've quickly learned through my healthcare career that looking at the big picture is quite important. So, yeah.
And what about head and heart?
What did I pick for that one? I don't think we picked sides. Did we pick
You raised
sides for that
hands.
one?
Which one did you raise your hand for? Or
I
if I had to ask you now, which one would you raise your hand for?
genuinely don't know for that one. Like personally, because oftentimes, like even though I like belief is my first strength, and you would assume that heart would be how I do things, but at the end of the day, I also try not let my emotions lead my actions, because oftentimes that's where you end up making not the best decisions depending on the situation. So that's why I don't actually have a side to pick, because although hearts is usually the most common thing for someone who has belief, I try and think through things as well. So I'm still going to avoid that answer.
You're telling us head, and you're just not telling us head. That's what you're doing. Yeah. So you remember when I was like, hey, if you're taking time here, this is you being deliberative and taking your time. And you just perfectly explained why you just chose head instead of heart. Yeah.
You logisticized the whole thing. Yep.
And you did it all yourself. You don't even need us here. We're going to leave the rest of the podcast to Frans to just ask himself the questions, and he's going to answer them. Yeah. So, when we look back on some of your past teams that you've worked with, does understanding strengths now kind of help explain why some of these groups clicked a little easier than others?
Yes. I think for me, part of it is I've often been thrown into groups that were already set, like for work, for example. And for example, actually, I'm not going to mention which one, but one of my work situations I got thrown into, and it was not a great environment. And looking at my strengths, I worked with that team to eventually, like, it was an amazing team to work with by the end of my career there. So I would say yes, it makes like the strengths play into how I was able to build into that team. And I think like at the end of the day, it is also who I am, those strengths. So yeah.
So how does that knowledge and some knowledge of now your classmates, we've been sharing how strength shows up for everybody else. You've had individual conversations, group conversations. So with this added awareness, how is that going to impact perhaps future team projects now, maybe within the MBA?
I don't know if it's going to change necessarily too much, because often with those kind of like strengths, I've been aware of people's strengths and weaknesses, and I try and meet them where they're at. Now, maybe they'll have a better understanding of where they are, which will be able to make it so they can communicate with me a little bit better as to what they want and things that they need. But I often would try and meet my teammates with their needs because, like I've mentioned, I don't know if I should say this in a podcast, but I don't really care for my grades. Like, grades isn't the end-all be-all for me. So if someone does want to get those A's, then I'll try and be where they're at and try and work with them. So I'm more malleable. Now, did this exercise make me even more malleable? Maybe. I'm not 100% sure, but yeah.
Cool. I think to Paul's point, we could probably just leave you and let you talk a little bit more about what you've learned about strengths. But I think we are running up against time, and there is a lightning round and, of course, Paul's question that he's super excited to ask about today. So why don't we move on to the lightning round? You ready? Okay, 3 quick questions, 3 gut answers. What is it about your career story that's given you the biggest boost?
Um, Sorry, I know this is lightning round, but my experience of playing soccer in England, that was the start of it. So that was the biggest boost.
Cool. What's one thing you wish you'd learned sooner?
Nothing. I'm happy with when I learned everything.
Cool. And service is really important to Paul and I. It's just kind of who we are, and so we always like to hear how service is going to show up for you in the coming week.
In the coming week is reading week, so for me it will be taking care of myself so I can then help others after.
Good plan. All right, Paul, you're up. What question you got?
I was telling these guys before the show that I never come in prepared with a question, but today I am. And I am very excited to ask this. So, Frans, you and I share a passion for sports. And 2 sports that I've seen you or heard of you talk about with myself and with others, F1 racing and soccer or football. Let's use the proper terminology for the sake of this. If Paul was a magic genie coming out of a very shiny gold lantern, and I could say you could be a professional athlete in either you could be a professional footballer or you could drive for your favorite constructor in the F1 races, which one are you choosing and why?
This might be the hardest question. I think for this answer, I will give you a different answer depending on the week. Like 1 week I'll give you one year I'll give you another. For right now, I would say F1. For the big reason that I've made it decently far into a soccer career, that I was happy where I was at, but I've not done that with F1. So,
cool.
Yeah.
All right. So then what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show a graphic of like a Max Verstappen outfit with Franz's head on top of it. And then that is going to be played right wherever we can find it on the screen somewhere. That's what I will do. Yeah.
Perfect. I think that's a brilliant addition. Frans, I want to point out that we said this a little bit before, but I want to highlight it. You have one of every single one of the colors in Clifton Strengths. So when you talk about uniqueness, that is unique in and of itself. And that's actually one of the themes that I've seen throughout this entire podcast is that you have the ability, so you've used the words to meet them where they're at, which to me means you can pull from all 4 corners if we use the example that we did in class. You have the ability to have this well-rounded set of strengths, of attributes, to like pick the one you need in the moment. And you just said it with Paul's answer, which is really neat. Well, 1 week I might do this, but you know what? The other week that might fit better. And I actually think that that is a underrated strengths skill set to be able to flex your strengths in different spaces. And it's certainly my experience of you. And I really appreciate your willingness to offer those insights in class, to dig in with this, to lean in, but to lean in with your own belief system and understanding of yourself, which is really clearly a really core part of you. So thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing all of the different areas that you're in, ways you're able to see this, and just give us another way to look at strengths together. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. All right, key takeaways. And I kind of edited the podcast with mine, and I really enjoyed, he said it word for word, meet people where they're at. He said it more than once, and then what he said that in not so many words in a lot of places. And I think there is people who have just this lovely mix of strengths from different kind of corners, we'll use that phrase again, have a unique way to truly meet people where they're at and to be able to see it from a more kind of well-rounded lens. And I don't have that. So I have 4 blue and an orange in my top 5. And so my lens is heavily skewed to that of relationship building. And I don't have the kind of lens that he does. And so I think that's really unique about him. And I really appreciated that some people just are more predisposed to doing that. And he does it well. And I thought that was really cool.
Cool. Makes me think about the platinum rule, right?
Yeah.
It's we have the golden rule of treat others how we want to be treated, but it's treat others how they want to be treated. And it's a beautiful way of like just meeting people where they're at. I think that's beautiful. So nice. For me, Franz had said that the thing he enjoys most about the MBA program is just laughter with his classmates. And he talked about includer and having the include. He doesn't want people to feel left out. I cannot tell you how much I get behind that. I think that, that's one of the ways that I build trust with people is through humor and through laughter, because I think life is too short not to laugh. For me all the time, I try to laugh as much as humanly possible because that helps me get through days. There's this podcast, you might have heard of it. It's a Diary of a CEO or something like that. I
Just
think
a
it's
little
called.
one.
Yeah, it's small.
Not a big deal.
Only like 13 million subscribers.
yeah.
Very close to what we have for subscribers.
Oh,
actually.
close. Very close.
Yeah. We have
Give
like,
or take a few million, but...
yeah, like 12.9 million or whatever it is. Yeah. But, Brené Brown was on that podcast, and we both really enjoy what she has to say. And she says, I believe people, this was just a clip. I have not watched the podcast yet, but the clip said something along the lines of like, I believe people hide from joy. And, what a shame that is, because I think the more we can laugh, we feel better. We, go through our day with a little bit more enthusiasm and excitement. And so that is my key takeaway from today, is just not hiding from joy. So
I appreciate that. And so that's maybe my next reminder. The next time you make a joke that may or may not be at my expense, I will say thank you, Paul, for sparking joy.
Sparking joy. I like to spread the humor around to many different people.
do.
So it's and it all comes from a place of just trying to experience a little bit of joy. So
I like that. Awesome. All right. Next week is a reading week, like Franz said, which means the students have it off. We don't. Students seem to ask us or say, you have next week off, right? No, we are here. The podcast will be here. We will have a guest, and we will see you next week. Thanks for tuning in to the Career Boosters podcast. We hope you had a blast. Yeah, we know that's corny. Catch you next time, and remember to subscribe wherever you enjoy podcasts.